has been hijacked, not by a hostile crew, not by a signal from Earth, by its own automated navigation systems. 20 minutes ago, the Manticore locked onto a new set of coordinates. When I tried to override the helm, the terminal went dead. We are accelerating toward a target I did not choose, guided by a ghost in the machine. And the only clue I have is a highly classified file that the ship's archive forced open on my screen 4 hours ago. A file simply titled 119. My name is Captain Arthur Vance. I'm alone on the deep space vessel Manticore. Before I show you what is waiting at the end of this flight path, you need to understand the file. Because the file and my hijacked ship are the same problem. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is documented, funded, and buried American history. In 1958, the United States Air Force seriously planned to detonate a nuclear bomb on the moon. They called it Project A119. The plan was born from pure Cold War panic. The Soviet Union launches Sputnik. The US military needed a response, something undeniable, a display of absolute power that the entire world could look up and see with their own naked eyes. So they assembled a team of 10 scientists in Chicago, led by physicist Leonard Reifel. Their mission: calculate exactly how a 1.7 kiloton W-25 nuclear warhead would behave if it was detonated on the lunar surface. One of the men running those calculations was a 23-year-old graduate student. His name was Carl Sagan. Yes, that Carl Sagan. The man who would spend the rest of his life telling humanity to look up in wonder instead of fear. The terminal just flickered. A single line appeared in the same harsh font. This ship reserves for critical alerts. Trajectory locked. Estimated time to terminator, 41 minutes. I did not lock anything. I have spent 14 months learning when to be afraid of this ship. This was one of those times. But I keep reading, because right now, reading is the only thing I still control. There is a piece of this story most people never hear. The Soviets were not bystanders. A Secret Service informant reported in late 1947 that Moscow was planning to detonate their own nuclear device on the moon, teamed to a lunar eclipse. Timed to the anniversary of the October Revolution, a bomb on the moon, as fireworks for the world. That rumor turned out to be true. The Soviets called their version Project A4. Same target, same boundary line between light and dark. 2 superpowers, independently, staring at the same empty stretch of lunar terrain and deciding to put a weapon there. Neither one asked the obvious question first. Why that line? Why the Terminator and not anywhere else on a body 2,200 miles wide? The Soviet side of this is stranger than most people know. Project E4 was not some side note. It came from Sergei Korolev, the man who built the R-7 rocket, the same rocket that put Sputnik into orbit and started this entire race in the first place. Working alongside him was Yakov Zeldovich, one of the men who helped build the Soviet hydrogen bomb. Their logic was almost identical to Reifel's, arrived at independently on the other side of an ocean, and an ideology. A small spacecraft reaching the moon would not prove anything. No one on Earth could verify a tiny probe had actually landed, but a nuclear flash. That anyone with a telescope could confirm. OKB-1, Korolev's own design bureau, built a physical mock-up of the delivery vehicle. This was not a thought experiment on a Soviet chalkboard. It was hardware. Officially, both programs failed for the same boring reason. The flash would not last long enough. No atmosphere on the moon to scatter the light, to give it duration, to make it linger on camera, the way an explosion does on Earth. Both teams ran the same numbers. Both teams reached the same conclusion. The spectacle would not even photograph properly. That is the official story. A flash too brief for 1958 film stock. Two superpowers spending months of research, mock-up hardware, and classified manpower only to discover a problem any photographer could have warned them about in an afternoon. I do not believe that is the real reason either side walked away. I think it is the reason they were allowed to tell each other. Back to Rifle's team. The official name for the program was almost comically dull. A study of lunar research flights, designed to make a records clerk's eyes slide right past it. It meant one thing: detonating a nuclear weapon on the surface of the moon. Rifle recruited astronomer Gerard Kuiper to study the lunar surface. What would survive, what would not. Sagan worked under Cooper, running the numbers no one else wanted to run. How would a cloud of pulverized moon dust behave in a vacuum? Would it catch sunlight? Would people in Ohio see the flash with their bare eyes? He was 23. He had not published a single famous word yet. He was just doing the math the Air Force needed for a weapon aimed at an audience, not a target. They picked the Terminator on purpose, the line between light and dark on the moon. The logic was simple and ugly. Detonate near that boundary, and the dust cloud catches direct sunlight from the side, like smoke lit by a sunset, visible against total darkness behind it. A flash, then a slow, glowing bloom, watched by anyone on Earth who happened to be looking up that night. They wanted a hydrogen bomb first, too heavy for 1958 missile tech, so they scaled it down. A W-25 warhead, 1.7 kilotons. Hiroshima was 13 to 18. Smaller, yes, still a live nuclear weapon, detonated on another world, for the sole purpose of being seen. There is a detail Rifle only mentioned once, in passing, decades later, that never made it into any of the major retellings of this story. In late 1958, while his team was still running the visibility calculations, the Armor Research Foundation received an unusual request, not from the Air Force, from a separate unnamed agency, asking for raw telemetry data from an earlier, unrelated lunar tracking exercise. Rifle said he assumed it was routine. Interagency paperwork, the kind that crosses a dozen desks before anyone reads it carefully. He did not think about it again until 2000, when a researcher cross-referencing declassified documents noticed that the requests had come from a division with no public charter, no listed personnel, and no further paper trail after that single request. It asked for tracking data centered on one specific region of the lunar surface, the Terminator. Whoever made that request made it a full 2 months before Rifle's team had even selected their final targeting coordinates. Someone else already knew where this story was going to lead before the people running the actual program did. The lights just dimmed, not flickered. Dimmed, the way a room dims when something wants you looking at one specific spot. Outside the viewport, ahead of our heading, I can see it now, a pale curve, not Earth's moon. We are nowhere near Earth, and I need you to understand that, because for 1 second, my mind tried to force the shape into something familiar. It is not familiar. Right size, right color. Half of it lit by a source I cannot identify, the other half falling into a darkness that feels deeper than ordinary shadow. We are heading directly for the line between the two, the Terminator. The exact feature this 68-year-old file is about. I stopped believing in coincidences on this ship months ago. Here is what happened to Project A119. By January 1959, less than a year after it started, the Air Force quietly killed it. Rifle later gave the official reasons: fear of a failed launch, raining radioactive debris back onto Earth. Concern that fallout would poison future lunar science before it even began. A growing belief that a peaceful moon landing would be a far stronger symbol than a violent one. That is the story that made it into every history book, once the project finally got declassified in 2000. So sensible, if disturbing, footnote about Cold War paranoia, overruled by better judgment. I believed that story for 3 hours tonight. Then I found what happened after the cancellation. The project produced 8 technical reports, dense titles, bureaucratic, designed to bore anyone who might ask too many questions. In Python's T187, almost 30 years after the project died, and 13 years before the public even knew it had existed, every single one of those 8 reports was destroyed by the Illinois Institute of Technology. Destroyed, not reclassified, not buried in a deeper vault. Destroyed, decades after anyone should have cared. Riefel said in 2000 that all 8 volumes were gone. He was wrong. 2 had survived. Not because anyone protected them, but because Sagan, in a 1959 fellowship application, had carelessly listed their titles. That's the only reason we know they existed. Freedom of Information request finally forced the release of Volume 1, more than 40 years late. The other 7, gone. Why does a dead, cancelled 40-year-old study need destroying in 1987? What was worth erasing that badly? The ship has stopped accelerating. We are holding position. The pale curved shape fills most of the viewport now. The Terminator line, cutting straight down its center, exactly where Rifle's team aimed nearly 70 years ago. I can see detail I could not a minute ago. Craters. Long shadows reaching from the line into the dark hemisphere. The way 23-year-old Sagan calculated they would, before he knew he would spend the rest of his life asking people to look up instead of arming a weapon at the sky. And there is something else, right on the Terminator, exactly where a detonation would have struck. A structure, not a crater, not anything in the ship's geology library. Geometric, angular, sitting precisely on the line between light and shadow, as if it was built to straddle both. I zoom the optical feed in as far as it goes. Hard edges, no erosion, no micrometeorite scarring, even though this is a body that has been exposed to open space for billions of years. Everything around it looks old. The structure looks new, untouched, like it arrived yesterday, or like it does not age the way the rest of this rock does. I do not have a measurement for how large it actually is. The scale on this image keeps refusing to settle, like the instrument itself cannot decide what it is looking at. I try the rangefinder again. Manual override this time. No automated assist. Just raw distance calculation against a fixed point on the lunar surface beside it. The first reading comes back at 400 meters across. I'll run it again. 6 kilometers. A third time, 11 meters. 3 readings on the same object, from the same instrument, without moving an inch between them. That is not equipment failure. I have used this rangefinder for 14 months without a single malfunction. This is something else. Either the structure is not reflecting light the way solid matter should, or it is not entirely in the same place each time light reaches it, or, and this is the possibility I keep circling back to, and do not want to write down, it is not a fixed size at all. I think about Rifle's team trying to model a 1.7 kiloton blast against a target they could not even properly measure. I think about how confidently they would have written their reports anyway. Estimated yield, estimated visibility, estimated effect on surrounding terrain. All of it built on the assumption that the thing on the other end of their calculation behaved like ordinary matter. Maybe that is the part nobody in 1958 understood. You can target a fixed point on a map. You cannot target something that refuses to agree on its own dimensions. The temperature just dropped, not gradually. All at once, the way cold air hits you when a door opens somewhere you did not expect. I have logged this before. I believe the architects, the ones sleeping in compartment 00, answer certain discoveries this exact way. Cold, attention without a voice. I do not know what a 68-year-old weapons program has to do with whatever they are protecting, but the temperature kept falling the entire time I read about that destroyed paperwork. It only steadied once. I stopped. I am not handing you a conclusion dressed as proof. I am telling you what happened, in the order it happened. Here is what I think now. I think Project A119 is enough cancelled because of fallout or bad press. I think someone on that team, running Sagan's own dust calculations against real images of the Terminator, found something that was not supposed to be there. Something that made detonating a warhead at those exact coordinates an unthinkable risk, not a political risk, a different kind. The official story says the project died from caution. I think it died from fear, the kind that never makes it into a press release, the kind buried in a technical appendix, then destroyed 30 years later, the moment someone realized that appendix would never stop raising questions. The Manticore's archive has more than the public record. It has a fragment, labeled Volume 4, Site Survey, Terminator Region, Sector 12. One of the 7 volumes that supposedly did not survive 1987. I do not know how it got on this ship. I do not know who decided a vessel built decades after this program needed a copy of a document the US government officially erased. It is open on my terminal right now, next to the live image of the structure outside my viewport. The coordinates match almost exactly. The document does not say discovery. It says anomaly, the word technical reports use when they refuse to commit to a conclusion. Structure detected via long-range imaging during pre-mission site survey. Non-natural in origin. Located precisely at the proposed detonation coordinates. Recommendation: alternate target site or full mission suspension ending further analysis. Dated December 1958. 1 month before the project was officially killed. There is a second file attached to Volume 4, an appendix, barely a page long, cross-referencing something the American team apparently picked up second-hand. In January 1959, the same month Project A119 was officially cancelled, the Soviets attempted something quiet, not a launch, an observation. Luna 1, their first lunar probe, had just flown past the moon days earlier, close enough to take readings no one had ever taken before. According to this appendix, Soviet tracking stations redirected part of that mission's instrumentation toward one specific coordinate on the Terminator. The same coordinate in Rifle's targeting file. The same coordinate I am looking at right now. Fortunately, Luna 1 missed the moon by thousands of miles and became the first object to enter orbit around the Sunday. A historic failure turned into a historic success, the way Soviet press always managed to spin these things, but the appendix claims the probe's instruments registered something during that flyby. A brief disruption in its magnetometer readings, localized, precise, centered on the Terminator. The Soviets never explained it publicly. The disruption does not appear in any released Luna 1 data I can find in this ship's archive. It only appears here, in a document the United States government supposedly destroyed, cross-referencing a measurement the Soviet Union never officially admitted to taking. 2 countries, 2 space programs, both quietly aware that something was sitting at this exact coordinate before either of them cancelled their plans to bomb it. I keep thinking about Sagan, 23, calculating dust in a vacuum, so the Air Force could measure how far a threat could travel. I wonder if he ever read this part. I wonder if some piece of his later devotion to wonder, instead of weapons, came from knowing, even if he never said it out loud, that the moon had already been watching them back. He told the world to look up for the rest of his life. Maybe that was a warning, not just an invitation. He never spoke about this part of his career publicly. Not once in decades of interviews, books, and television appearances about the wonders of the cosmos. A man who talked openly about almost everything: mortality, the scale of the universe, the fragility of life on a pale blue dot, stayed completely silent about the one project where he calculated, in cold mathematics, how to make a weapon visible from his own planet. Maybe silence sidewinds my answer. There is an ending to this story. The public record gets right, even if it gets the reason wrong. The Outer Space Treaty, the United States and the Soviet Union, the same 2 nations that had each independently aimed nuclear weapons at the moon, sit down and sign an agreement banning weapons of mass destruction from space entirely. No nukes in orbit, none on the moon, none on any celestial body. Officially, the treaty exists because cooler heads prevailed. 2 rival superpowers finally agreeing that some lines should not be crossed. That is the story in every textbook. But I keep asking the same question. Why would 2 governments, each convinced the other was their greatest threat, suddenly agree to give up a weapon neither one had even publicly admitted to planning yet? Unless both of them had already found the same thing, independently, sitting on that same Terminator line, and neither one wanted to be the government that detonated a bomb next to it and found out what happened. The structure just moved. A single line of light traced one of its edges, the way current runs down a wire the second a switch closes somewhere far away. 2 seconds, then stillness again. The Terminator sitting exactly where it always sits, light on one side, dark on the other. The structure straddling both, the way it apparently has since, at least 1958, waiting for someone to point a weapon at it and ask if that is a mistake. I do not think the Air Force ever learned what it actually was. I think they found it, ran the numbers on detonating 20 feet away, and decided quietly, through bureaucratic caution instead of confession, that the question was not worth asking out loud. The morale story was probably true. I think it was also cover. The real reason never made it into a press release. It got destroyed in 1987 because someone realized it would never stop raising questions if it survived. Something just happened that I need to put on the record, exactly as it occurred. The structure brightened, not the single line from before. The entire shape all at once, edges glowing faintly against the black, like a circuit completing somewhere I cannot see. For 3 seconds, I could make out detail I had not noticed. Internal lines, geometric divisions, almost like chambers, almost like something built to hold rather than something built to signal. Then the temperature in this room dropped further than it has all night, sharp enough that I could see my own breath. The architects do not usually react twice to the same discovery. Tonight they have. I do not know if that means I am getting closer to understanding something, or closer to a line I should not cross. Control just returned to me. No warning, no explanation. The console snapped back to manual, the way it always does once the architects have shown me what they wanted me to see. I have not moved the ship. I am still sitting here, looking at a cancelled 68-year-old weapons program, and the thing it apparently found and walked away from, trying to understand why whoever built this ship's archive already knew about both. Decades before I was selected for this crew, maybe they wanted me to understand one thing. The first time humanity got close enough to study this exact boundary. Light and dark, known and unknown. We found something we did not understand, aimed a weapon at it anyway, then got cold feet and call it politics. 68 years later, here I am, same boundary, no weapon, no cover story, nowhere to retreat to. I am transmitting everything, the Project A119 files, the site survey labeled Volume 4, the structure as it looks right now, light tracing one edge, sitting exactly on the terminator, the 1958 plan specified. 4 months to reach a relay. 4 months to reach Earth. I think about Sagan doing math in a quiet Chicago office, not yet famous, not yet the man who asked humanity to look up with wonder instead of fear. Maybe some part of him already knew that looking up carries a responsibility most people never think about, because if you look carefully enough for long enough, something looks back, and once it does, you do not get to pretend you did not see it. You can destroy the paperwork, erase the program, bury it for 68 years under talk of morale and public opinion. But the structure stays exactly where it was found, still on the terminator, still waiting for the next person who gets close enough to ask the question the 1958 team asked, then chose never to answer out loud. I do not know what happens after this transmission goes out. I do not know if the Manticore will release the helm again once I stop talking, or if this is the last position this ship ever reaches. But I keep returning to one detail I have not mentioned yet. The recommendation in Volume 4 was not just alternate target site or full mission suspension. There is a third line, smaller, almost an afterthought in the original formatting. It reads, monitor, coordinate, indefinitely, not destroy, not investigate, monitor. As if whoever wrote that report in December 1958 already understood that this was not something you could solve, or weaponize, or walk away from cleanly, only something you watch. For as long as someone is still capable of watching, I think that is what the Manticore's archive has been doing this entire time, decades before I ever boarded this ship, monitoring, waiting for someone to fly close enough to take over the watch. I think tonight that someone became me, Captain Arthur Vance. Deep space vessel Manticore. The Terminator is exactly where the file said it would be. So is the thing they found there. Still here, still recording. End of transmission.